Hey friends, today I'm going to tell you the story of a girl named Emily who faced a big challenge in her life. Her problem wasn't a lack of desire or ability, it was a struggle to maintain discipline. She had started many things, projects, hobbies, goals, but never quite followed through. And this wasn't something she was unfamiliar with. Everyone around her, from her mom to her favorite celebrity, kept telling her, "Without discipline, you won't achieve anything great." But despite her best efforts, Emily just couldn't seem to bring discipline into her life. She shared this frustration with her friend Jake, and as he smiled, he said, "You know, I struggle with the same thing. Why don't we go see someone about it?" Emily burst into laughter, saying, "Discipline problem? Do people really go to a doctor for that?" Jake's response was fascinating. "Actually, yes, but not just any doctor. There's a special one. His name is Dr. Book." Emily, still puzzled, asked, "Dr. Book? What kind of doctor is that?" Jake explained, "Dr. Book isn't your regular doctor. He's someone who helps solve modern problems, but instead of prescribing medicine, he prescribes books. Last week I went to him and learned all about motivation, how to stay self-motivated even when things get tough. Believe me, after hearing his advice, I felt more energized and focused. But I still struggle with discipline. So, this week I'm going back to learn how motivation and discipline go hand in hand. Would you like to join me?" Emily, intrigued, agreed, and they both went to meet Dr. Book. Jake introduced Emily to Dr. Book and explained her problem. Emily, eager to get some answers, asked, "Doctor, I've heard so many times that discipline is the key to success, but no matter how hard I try, I can't seem to bring it into my life. What do you think about this?" Dr. Book smiled and asked, "Have you ever heard of a man named Kurt Koppmeyer?" Emily and Jake shook their heads, both curious. Dr. Book continued, "Kurt Koppmeyer was a man who dedicated over 50 years of his life to studying the principles of success. He read countless books, articles, research papers, anything he could get his hands on to figure out the most important principle for success. One day, a renowned business coach named Brian Tracy asked him, 'Kurt, with all the principles you've studied, which one stands out the most?' Kurt thought for a moment and said, 'I've researched over 99 principles, but there's one that truly stands above the rest: self-discipline. Self-discipline is the father of all principles. It's like a master key that unlocks all the doors to success. No matter how smart or talented you are, if you don't have self-discipline, all your potential is wasted." Dr. Book then shared another story. "Let me tell you about Jiro Ono, a sushi chef from Tokyo. In the beginning, Jiro wasn't anything special. He had a small stall, a knife, and the basic skills he'd learned through hard work. But there was one thing Jiro had that most people didn't: discipline. Every day, he would wake up at 4 a.m., go to the market to buy fresh fish, and return to prepare sushi. He didn't do this for a week or a month, he did it every single day for years. His routine was simple: cut the fish, prepare the rice, roll the sushi. People would often ask him, "Why do you do the same thing every day? Don't you want to try something new?" But Jiro ignored them. His focus was on perfection, and his consistency paid off. Eventually, Jiro's restaurant, Sukiyabashi Jiro, became the first sushi restaurant in the world to earn 3 Michelin stars, the highest honor a chef can receive. Today, his name is synonymous with perfection, and his secret? Discipline. Both Emily and Jake were in awe of what Dr. Book had shared. "Now, do you understand?" Dr. Book asked. "Discipline is the foundation of success." Both friends nodded, but Emily asked, "That's all well and good, Doctor, but how do we actually bring discipline into our lives? How can we make it a habit?" Dr. Book smiled again. "Great question. Let me tell you about a book called The Power of Discipline by Daniel Walter. This book outlines how you can harness the power of self-discipline to transform your life and achieve your goals. It's not just about working harder, it's about working smarter, staying consistent, and building habits that align with your long-term vision. In this book, the author mentions 7 important rules that, if you follow them, can help you build the discipline you need in your life. Emily was curious and asked, "What are those rules?" Dr. Book smiled and said, "Patience. You'll learn all 7 in time. But first, you need to follow a key principle. There are 2 ways to make these rules work for you. First, stop doing things that you shouldn't do, and second, do more of what's good for you." The first rule focuses on how to stop doing things that aren't helpful. The author explains this in the book, The Practice of Urge Surfing and Controlling Impulses. Dr. Book asked, "What's something you often want to stop doing, but end up doing anyway?" Emily immediately responded, "Scrolling through reels. I keep doing it all day long, even though I know I should focus on more important work. My phone seems to grab my attention without me even realizing it." Dr. Book nodded, saying, "That's exactly it. In your journey toward discipline, the biggest challenge will be your impulses, the sudden urges that push us to pick up our phones, watch another episode, or eat that extra slice of pizza." A psychologist named Alan Marlett developed a technique called urge surfing to help manage these impulses. He said to think of your urges like waves in the ocean. At first, the wave is small, then it grows, and finally, it crashes. Your impulses are the same. When you feel an urge, it's strong at first, but if you just observe it, instead of giving in, it will eventually fade. Dr. Book then shared a story about one of his patients, a working professional who followed a healthy diet all day but struggled with junk food cravings at night. He taught her the technique of urge surfing. Whenever she felt the urge to eat junk food, she would wait for 10 minutes, observing her thoughts without judgment. At first it was hard for her, but she persisted. Over time, she noticed that the more she waited, the less intense the cravings became. Dr. Book continued, "Has this ever happened to you? You really want something, like food, but then you have to wait longer than expected. Maybe you're late getting to a restaurant. By the time the food arrives, you've lost your appetite. That's because your impulse fades with time." He then explained the second rule, understanding the science of discipline. He shared an experiment from 2009 by Todd Herr and Colin Cameron. In the experiment, participants were given a choice. Take $1,000 now or wait 10 years and receive $1 million. Most chose the immediate $1,000. While scanning their brains, researchers found that the impulse centers lit up for those who chose the instant reward. But for those who were willing to wait, areas in the brain related to self-control and decision-making were activated. Dr. Book said, "This experiment showed that when we focus on immediate rewards, our impulse control centers take over. But when we think about future benefits, a different part of our brain, the prefrontal cortex, helps us make better decisions." Jack was a little confused. "So, how does this help us?" he asked. Dr. Book smiled. "This experiment shows that we can train our prefrontal cortex, just like training a muscle. The more we practice thinking about long-term rewards instead of instant gratification, the stronger our self-control and discipline become. It's like going to the gym. If you only work on your upper body and skip leg day, your legs remain weak. But if you train your brain to focus on long-term goals, it strengthens your discipline." Dr. Book continued, "For example, if you want to build discipline in business, you don't have to focus only on business. If you train your discipline in one area, like going to the gym, it will help strengthen your discipline in other areas, like business or health. It's all connected." He then asked Emily and Jake, "What's one thing you both enjoy that you can commit to doing regularly? Something that will help you practice discipline?" Jake said, "I love playing cricket." Dr. Book responded, "Great. Start playing cricket with discipline, and it will help you practice self-control." Emily said, "I love swimming." Dr. Book encouraged her. "That's perfect. Start swimming regularly and bring discipline to that routine." He then introduced the third rule, developing a long-term mindset. Dr. Book asked, "Do you know anyone who's made a fortune by thinking long-term?" Both Emily and Jake responded, "Warren Buffett." Dr. Book nodded. "Exactly. But did you know that Warren Buffett's long-term mindset didn't come naturally to him? He bought his first stock at 11, but after seeing some short-term gains, he sold it. Years later, he realized that if he had held on to that stock, he would have made far more money. This experience taught him the value of long-term thinking. He trained his brain to avoid the temptation of instant rewards, and that mindset is what made him one of the richest people in the world." Dr. Book explained, "Think of yourself like a marathon runner. Sprinters race quickly for a short time, but they burn out fast. Marathon runners, however, pace themselves and go the distance. If you approach discipline like a marathon, you'll develop the patience and consistency needed to succeed. On the other hand, if you focus on short-term rewards,
you're saying if I
your
set
discipline will weaken.
short-term goals, like trying to become a millionaire in a year,
That's not helpful?" Dr. Book responded, "Exactly. If you chase after short-term rewards, your discipline will suffer. But if you learn to think long-term and practice patience, your discipline will grow stronger." He concluded, "The key is to develop a marathon mindset. Keep working steadily toward your goals, and your discipline will grow. And don't worry, there's an easy way to make this happen. You'll understand it when we get to rule number 4, daily habits and routines. You've all heard of Mike Tyson, the legend in the world of boxing. You might know about him, but one thing you might not know is that he followed his training routine religiously. It wasn't that he liked training. In fact, he hated it. He himself said, "I hate every minute of training, but I tell myself, don't quit. Suffer now and live the rest of your life as a champion." At 4 a.m., when all the lions were sleeping, Tyson would run on a deserted road, even if it was raining or cold. He would never break his routine. It was the power of routine that built his discipline and made his body so strong that he became a beast in the ring. This is not just about Tyson. Barack Obama, Bill Gates, all of them had daily routines. Harvard University research supports this. When you have a structured morning routine, it activates the prefrontal cortex of your brain. This part, which we talked about in rule number 2, is responsible for self-control and willpower. Every morning, when you take any action with discipline, you create psychological momentum that continues throughout your day. It helps you make disciplined decisions. For example, this has happened to me many times. Whenever I wake up in the morning and decide to go to the gym, swim, read a book, or journal, I notice that starting my day positively helps me make better and more disciplined decisions throughout the day. But if I start the morning with laziness and no routine, the whole day becomes difficult, and I struggle to make good choices. Does this ever happen to you? Both nodded and said, "Yes, it does, sir. This is why it's crucial for you to follow a routine every morning. Even if it's just a 5-minute or 10-minute routine, it is very important to have one." Rule number 5, which is the power of gratitude discipline. Let me tell you the story of a client named Ravi. Ravi was impulsive like most people. He would do a lot of unnecessary shopping, eat junk food, and could never control his actions. He used to set goals, but could never achieve them. So, I asked him to do something called a gratitude doodle. I told him to practice a gratitude exercise for 5 minutes every morning, where he would write down 5 things he was grateful for. When I first told him this, Ravi was confused. He thought, "What does this have to do with discipline?" But since he respected me, and I insisted, he started doing it, though still unsure. After a few weeks, when he came back to me, he was very happy and said, "Doctor, when I first started doing this, I felt silly. I wanted discipline in my life. But you made me do this with a grateful attitude." But after a few weeks, I started noticing a change. I started focusing on the blessings I had, and my impulsiveness slowly began to decrease. I shifted my attention from things I didn't have to things I already had. I stopped shopping unnecessarily and eating junk food. I realized I don't need to buy new things to be happy. I need to take care of my health and focus on actions that will bring happiness in the long run. This practice started bringing discipline into my life. That's why, if you don't know which routine to follow in the morning, one thing you should definitely start doing is practicing gratitude. You can do it through journaling, praying, or any method that works for you, but make sure to do it and follow rule number 6, which is willpower fatigue and managing mental energy. In 1999, a psychologist named Will Baumeister conducted an experiment that helped people understand the true nature of willpower. It was simple. 2 groups of participants were given 2 things: a plate of freshly baked cookies and a plate of radishes. One group was told to only eat the radishes, while the other group was allowed to eat cookies or whatever they wanted. Afterward, both groups were given a challenging puzzle to solve. The results were interesting. The group that only ate radishes gave up quickly when faced with the difficult puzzle, whereas the other group, which had eaten cookies, persevered longer and didn't give up as easily. Dr. Book said, "This experiment shows that willpower is like a muscle. It can get fatigued if overused. The group that had to resist the cookies used up their willpower and gave up quickly. The group that didn't face such a challenge had more willpower left for the puzzle." Emily asked, "What should we learn from this experiment?" Dr. Book responded, "It's important to understand the need for breaks. Even Steve Jobs, when working at Apple, took regular breaks to preserve his willpower." Finally, the most important lesson is embracing discomfort and negative emotions. You've probably heard of Michael Phelps, one of the greatest swimmers in the world, who has won many gold medals. Do you know what happened to Michael Phelps once? During an Olympic race, water got inside his goggles, and he was unable to see anything. If most people had been in his shoes at that moment, they would have panicked and lost the race. But even after facing such a problem, Phelps did not lose focus. He completed the race and not only finished it, but also won and set a world record. Jake and Emily asked, "How did this happen?" Well, it happened because Phelps's coach deliberately made him practice with water in his goggles many times. The coach wanted him to be prepared for any unexpected situation. And guess what? Because of the discomfort of training this way, when it actually happened, Phelps performed so well that he broke the world record. You see, most people try to avoid discomfort. Whenever they face tough situations, they try to run away from them. But extraordinary people like Michael Phelps achieve greatness because they embrace discomfort. They love it instead of fearing it. This is the last lesson. If you want to achieve discipline in your life, instead of hating the discomfort of difficult tasks, start loving them. The people who can go to the gym for long periods of time are the ones who learn to love the process. They embrace the pain, and that's why they continue. On the other hand, people who complain about the pain and the effort will always find it difficult to stick with it. They give up quickly. So love your discomforts because they lead to personal growth. Emily and Jake asked, "Sir, can you quickly summarize all 7 points so I can write them down and not forget them?" Dr. Book replied, "Sure, here are the key points. These are the 7 rules you must follow. 1. Practice self-control and manage your impulses. 2. Understand the science of discipline. 3. Develop a long-term mindset. 4. Create daily habits and routines. 5. Practice gratitude to build discipline. 6. Understand willpower and manage your mental energy. 7. Embrace discomfort and negative emotions." Later, Emily said, "When I was coming here with Jake, I was a bit doubtful about what you would tell me. I didn't know what kind of doctor you were, and I wondered if my time would be wasted. But trust me, after listening to everything you shared, I feel like I've made the best decision of my life coming here." Dr. Book said, "The best thing for me is when you start applying at least 2 or 3 of these things in your life. Do you promise to do that?" Both of them said yes, sir, and thanked him. And there you have it, friends. The 7 rules to unlock the power of discipline and transform your life. Remember, success isn't about doing something extraordinary once. It's about doing the small things consistently, with intention and focus. Whether it's starting your day with a simple routine, practicing gratitude, or embracing discomfort, each step you take strengthens your foundation for greatness. Discipline isn't something you're born with. It's a skill you build, one habit at a time. So, what's your first step going to be? Let me know in the comments below. And if you found this video helpful, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more inspiring content. Let's grow.